My chocolate cake with peanut butter cream cheese frosting recipe is absolutely amazing. I don't repeat recipes very much here on my channel, but I make this one once a year for a reason. It's absolutely outstanding. Let's go over the ingredients. You will need one 15.25 ounce box of white cake mix and one small 3.9 ounce box of instant chocolate pudding, to which I'm going to add a quarter cup as I measure 40 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. And to the cocoa powder, I'm going to add half a cup of water, 120 grams. Here I have about 3 teaspoons of instant coffee, 4 grams, which I'm going to dissolve in half a cup of water, 120 grams. Over here, I have half a cup of sour cream, 120 grams. You can use full fat, fat-free. I'm using light, so in the middle. I'm also going to add a quarter cup of oil. I'm using canola. So I measure 50 grams, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 3 large eggs, and over here an extra quarter cup of water. Like I said, I make this recipe every year. The only thing I'm changing is I'm using a quarter cup less of extra water. So this recipe is really easy. All you have to do is mix everything together. But first, I'm going to dissolve the coffee and I'm going to bloom the chocolate. So I'm going to heat up the water in the microwave for about a minute until it starts to boil. Then I'm going to mix it in with the cocoa powder to help bring out the flavor. I'm going to do that off camera, then I'll bring you back. Now it's time to mix everything together. So I'm just going to empty out the instant chocolate pudding. I am using chocolate fudge flavor, but you can use any type of chocolate pudding that you want. I am going to add the eggs last because I don't want them to cook. So I'm just going to add the cocoa, the bloomed cocoa powder first. Scrape that off camera. The coffee, the oil, a little bit of oil to make sure a little bit of body. Vinegar. Your cake will not taste like vinegar. This is just going to help make it fluffier. Teaspoon of vanilla. Sour cream. Now I'm going to mix until combined. If you don't have an electric handheld mixer, you could definitely do this by hand or in a stand mixer as well. As you can see, the cake batter is blended together. It looks amazing. So now I'm just gonna pour it into my prepared 8-inch cake pans. I recommend preparing them before you start mixing so that everything goes smoothly. You can eyeball it, but I am gonna get my food scale to make sure the layers are equal. And as you can see here, some of the batter was not completely mixed, so make sure your batter is completely mixed. Get your spoon deep down into the bowl to make sure everything is well combined. But once my layers are ready to go and I've evened out the batter, I'm going to put my cake layers into a 325-degree oven uncovered. I will let you know for how long. I just pulled my chocolate cake layers out of the oven. They are in at 325 degrees Fahrenheit uncovered for between an hour and an hour and 5 minutes. I kept checking them with the toothpick until it came out clean. I let the chocolate cake layers cool in the pans for about 15 minutes. Then I took them out and let them cool completely. And now it's time to put on the peanut butter cream cheese frosting. This is actually a clip from a previous video. Unfortunately, I ran out of time and I didn't have the opportunity to record myself making this frosting and assembling the cake, but I'll be sure to include a link in the description box to the recipe for the frosting. The combination of peanut butter and cream cheese is really delicious because the tanginess of the cream cheese helps to bring out the flavor in the peanut butter. It does take a while to come together because it's so thick, but it's definitely worth the little bit of effort because it is absolutely fantastic. Although you could serve this cake immediately after frosting it, I recommend putting it into the refrigerator covered for at least 4 hours so that it can chill all the way through and all the flavors can marry. I don't know why, but I think it tastes better after it sat for at least 4 hours. I put my cake in a cake carrier in the refrigerator, but if you don't have one of those, you could definitely just stick some toothpicks in it and then use that to wrap plastic wrap around the cake so that it doesn't actually touch the frosting. I actually let my cake chill in the refrigerator overnight, so the next day I was definitely ready to cut the first slice and give it a try. And just as I was expecting, my chocolate peanut butter cake with cake mix recipe turned out great because it was absolutely delicious. First off, the cake itself. It had a really deep, rich chocolate flavor because of all of the cocoa powder and the coffee. It was more of a dark chocolate flavor. The cake definitely tasted like a cake, but it wasn't as sweet as a lot of cakes are, so there was definitely a bit of bitterness in the background. The frosting was absolutely fantastic. As I already explained, the tanginess in the cream cheese helped to bring out the peanut butter flavor, and even though this did have a good amount of powdered sugar, I didn't find it to be overly sweet. Even when I took a bite or two of just frosting, I didn't find it to be too sweet. And even though the frosting was definitely amazing on its own, it was when it was combined with the chocolate cake that it really became outstanding. Like I already said, the cake wasn't super sweet, and I think that the bit of dark chocolate bitterness in the background helped to balance out the sweetness from the peanut butter cream cheese frosting and also helped bring out the flavor. It was almost like the chocolate cake was the perfect canvas in the background to really highlight the frosting. I know this sounds kind of like an odd or an overly dramatic way to describe the flavor, but that's what I think happened. Honestly, as expected, this cake was perfect, so I wouldn't really change anything. One thing I did want to point out is that if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I make this cake once per year. I follow the recipe almost exactly. However, I use a little bit less extra water this time. Usually I add half of a cup of extra water to the batter, but this time I only added a quarter cup. There were some parts of the cakes that I've made in the past that had a slight gummy layer, and I think it was because maybe I added a little bit too much moisture to the batter, but by reducing the water a little bit, I felt like this cake turned out fine. Even though it was maybe a little bit drier than other cakes that I've made, I thought that the texture was better. Another thing I wanted to point out is that although this cake is definitely delicious on its own, it is phenomenal with some vanilla ice cream. So if you have some ice cream on hand, I definitely recommend serving this a la mode. If you follow my channel, you know I make a lot of desserts, but I have to say that this chocolate peanut butter cake with cake mix recipe is absolutely fantastic. Most desserts I do not repeat, but I make this cake at least once a year. I know I have followers who make this cake for their family gatherings, so that's just another testament to how good this is. If you make it, I know you'll like it. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.